So recently, a writer died, and she was given the choice of whether or not she was going to go to hell or she was going to go to heaven. Now, being a prudent decision maker, she said, you know, I'd like to take a look at both of them first, see which one's going to be the better fit. So she's descending her way down into the fiery pits, and she sees writers chained to endless rows of tables. They're in a sweatshop, and they're getting whipped with thorns and branches as they write. And she says, this looks horrible. Let me see the other place. Heading up into the clouds of heaven, and she looks, and she sees endless rows of tables of writers. They're chained to the tables as they write, getting whipped with thorns and switches. And she says, wait a second. This is the same thing I just saw down there. And she hears a voice coming from the clouds and says, no, it's not. These writers are getting published. I'm not your adversary, I promise. So I want to make an apology right from the get-go here before we get going. To be honest with you, I would be much more qualified to talk on this a month from now, say late April. So I guess I just want to clear the air with that. The good thing is I'm a lot more qualified than I was in February when I could have been giving this talk also. And that really should give you an idea of how quickly this industry is changing. It has nothing to do with my effort on the subject. It just has to do with the fact that we're in the middle of an industry revolution right now. And I think sometimes we forget as romantic writers, I mean, I come from a writing background first, not from publishing. I think sometimes we imagine ourselves in our little writing spot, that place that we go that inspires us. I like to go places where I can see people, where I can feed off of their energy and observe them and build them into my characters. And we want to write this great book, have it printed, smell nice, and have somebody sitting by the fire and reading it and loving it, right? I mean, isn't that the dream of a writer? But the truth of the matter is even the role of the writer is changing. People are reading books differently. They're buying them differently. They're finding them in different ways. And it's important for all of us as writers to recognize that so that we can stay relevant. You know, just a few things to think about today. First of all, why do we write? We write because we want people to feel the impact of our words. Anybody here write for that reason? Just a couple? Okay, I'm frightened right now. Okay. How many people want a lot of books sold? Okay, that's important too, right? How many people would love to be able to support their living purely by writing? Okay, that's good. So it's important, right, that we understand our audience and understand who it is that we're reaching. I mean, I have to even ask the question, am I relevant as a publisher? Nowadays, the solutions for writers out there to be able to publish their own work, get it edited, get it marketed, sell it, get paid for it, you can do it all right from the desk in your house, right? So am I even relevant? These are just some things we've got to think about. So one of the things that we look at, I think we have to understand a little bit of publishing history. I'm just going to give a really brief taste of the things that I think are most important. What happened in 1454? Why was that important? Gutenberg. Good. Okay, we've been studying. So movable print, pretty important, right? Truth of the matter is once movable print came along, books have pretty much looked somewhat similar to what they were then, even up to today, right? Okay, let's fast forward a little bit then. Time frame, 1875, 1903. Anybody know why that was important? Anybody? Offset printing. Offset printing went through the renaissance of development of its own in the late 1800s. And that methodology is still very similar to what's used today, okay? So let's fast forward a little bit more. I'm going to get going quicker here. 1949. Anybody know why that was important? It's actually important to a lot of you in this room here, based on the books I saw in the back. 1949, Fawcett Publications. Anybody know who that is? Oh. Gold medal books. Has anybody ever read a gold medal book? They were not the first paperback books. They weren't the first ones that cost 25 cents, and they certainly weren't the first ones to fit in your pocket. But they opened up a new age for writers like yourselves and like myself to give new people to the industry an opportunity to break in. Kurt Vonnegut actually broke his way in through Fawcett Publications, gold medal books. They were sold for $0.25 apiece. Okay? Why is this so important in our industry? The reason why it's so important, not because they were the first paperbacks, but they were the first ones to actually take off and be successful as a series. In the first 6 months, they sold almost 10 million copies of their books. That's a pretty significant impact, isn't it? So the reason why it's important to us today is that actually changed the methods of bringing in new authors, changed the methods of production, even changed the way that publishers look at royalties. So we're going to fast forward again. So this is a pretty significant point in our history, okay? It's going to start getting quicker here. Let's fast forward to 91, 93, that time frame. You know what developed then? Digital printing. Digital printing, okay? So a lot of books back there were printed on digital presses, right? Now the technology's taken some time to develop, but now it's getting to a point where it's actually almost indetectable with a quality digital print book from an offset print book. But why is this important? I hear people around the industry that kind of lift their nose up. Print on demand, you've heard that term before, right? But the truth of the matter is it's important in any product that we make to be able to produce it at whatever volume we need. Pretty soon, offset printers are going to go away. For the first time in over 100 years, most books are eventually going to be done through either digital printers or the next thing we're going to talk about. Okay, so you with me so far? 1454, 1873, 1949, 1991. Okay, these are significant moments. But listen to how many of them have been significant since then. 1995, Amazon.com goes live. If you don't know why that's not important to you, then you probably have been living under a rock. And I'm assuming you didn't buy it from Amazon. 1999, new format opens up for making ebooks a possibility. Now, ebooks weren't developed in 1999. Some people say they were actually developed in the 60s. But this is a point in time where it actually started to become possible for writers like you and I to make an ebook that could get out to a broad audience. So 95, we got Amazon. 99, ebooks. 2006, Sony comes out with a reader that has e-ink in it. 2007, Amazon comes out with a Kindle. 2009, Barnes & Noble comes out with a Nook. 2009 also, Amazon merges two of the largest self-publishing spaces, CreateSpace and BookSurge, brings them together and makes one of the most important elements for self-published authors in the world. 2010, iPad comes out, changes the way we look at books entirely. 2011, Amazon announces that their electronic books have outsold their print books. Think about that. Their electronic books have outsold their print books. 2012, the Department of Justice launched an investigation into Apple and 5 of the big boy publishers for collusion on price fixing with ebooks. You don't think this stuff matters to us? It's very, very important. For 500 years, we had maybe 6 or 7 significant events in the world of publishing. In the last decade, we've matched that number. You better believe it's an important time for writers. So obviously there's some challenges that come from that, right? More and more ebooks get sold. That's less and less being read by the fireplace, where you can smell the pages, where you know how far you are into the book based on what's between your thumb and your knuckle, right? It's even gotten to the point where aspirations have changed. So a few years ago, a young man was speaking to a guidance counselor, and they were talking about where he was going to be going in his career. He said, well, I want to be a writer. Well, that's great. No, I want to be a great writer. So the guidance counselor says, okay, what's going to make you a great writer? He says, well, I want to write things that reach people all over the world. I want to make them scream and cry. I want to make them feel the pain and frustration that comes out of my writing. Anybody know who that is? I don't either. He works for Microsoft and he writes error messages. Our world's changing. So let's talk about a few challenges that come from the digital age and the digital evolution, okay? First of all, here's some obvious ones, shortcuts. The easier it is for people to do something difficult, and writing a book is difficult, isn't it? Creating a book is difficult. Publishing a book is difficult. The easier those steps get, the more likely it is that people are to cut corners, okay? Another thing that happens from the anybody here been published by one of the New York publishers? Anybody have aspirations for that? Would you like to see your book published by a Random House, by a Penguin? I would. Yeah. Well, one of the things that's happening is because so many more new titles are being put into the market every year, they're not even paying attention to those first-time authors that they bring on. They may like your book. The first question they're going to ask you after they accept it is, what's your marketing plan? So, excuse me? You're the publisher, right? I thought you had the marketing plan. Believe it or not, they're often not even going to pay attention to your book until you yourself sell 10,000 copies of it. 10,000 copies, right? That's a lot of books. The most obvious thing, though, is the dilution of quality. And I think for a group like what we have here today, this is what we should be most concerned with. You guys have been coming together for 25 years in a common appreciation for a very important art, the art of writing. And when it's easy for people to not only write a book, get it edited, get it published, get it marketed, get it sold, all from their desk chair, what's that really going to mean to the quality of books that are out there? The further, that's right. The further we go into the digital market, the poorer quality the average book's going to be. Anybody here use an e-reader? A few people? It's not that big a deal if a book costs $1 or $2 to go and buy 10 books, right? It's not that hard to, you're sitting there, maybe you want to buy a book on how to prune your lemon tree. So you go and you find 5 of them on there and you figure, well, one of these ought to be pretty good. They're only $1 a piece, right? Well, what do you think is going to happen when the number of titles that's published, which by the way is 1 million new titles a year, which is a huge number, what do you think is going to happen when that is 2 million or 3 million? It's going to be hard for you to find a good book on pruning your lemon trees, right? Personally, for me, I don't want to go and buy 10 books, have 7 of them not be very good, 2 of them be marginal, and maybe have one that's a good book. But that's actually part of the potential of what we're seeing in the digital market, okay? But I think there's going to be a response to that. I think that readers are not going to accept that. I believe that in the next 2 years, we're going to actually see a backlash from those readers who say, wait a second, I'm not going to keep buying these books. I don't care if they're $1, I don't care if they're a penny, they're not good, right? And if you don't think that could happen, let's go back to that point in time in 1949 when Fawcett starts again, because believe it or not, we've already been through this. When those books started publishing, they sold 10 million copies of them. Other publishers said, oh, wait a second, we're going to get on board with this. They rushed to market, they pushed their editors, they pushed the quality, and pretty soon, those little paperback books that were coming out were garbage. And the reader said, we don't like that. So let me ask you a question now. Did paperback books survive? The 15 top publishing companies in North America sell more than 50% of their books in the paperback form. Okay, they sell 15 to 20% as an ebook, and the remainder as hardcover and audiobooks. Okay, paperback did survive, and you know what? Nobody thinks of paperback as far as a poor quality in terms of how a book is written anymore. Right? So we're actually seeing a resurgence of this again. We're going to be seeing it now with digital books. Digital books are an important medium, and I think for a community of writers like this, it's a very important conversation to keep having. It doesn't matter if you have an e-reader. I still prefer to pick up a book and hold it in my hand. For whatever reason, I feel emotionally connected with it. I feel like I remember, oh, that line, it was on a left-hand page about midway down, right? And I can go and find it again. I don't know if that'll ever change for me. But I do have an e-reader. Because I want to know what it looks like. I want to know what it feels like, and I want to know how people are getting their books on here. So, when these negative things happen, when these challenges come that challenge the sanctity of this art that we love, aren't there some opportunities too?